Welcome to Paramusic TV. I'm Johnny Long with a new series called Paramusic Hall of Fame. The artists and the songs that I'm featuring, some of them will be no-brainers when it comes to being in any Hall of Fame. These are my own personal influences in music. These are simply the artists that influenced my career in many ways. Some of them you may have heard of, some of them maybe you haven't, or maybe you've heard their songs but didn't realize who actually did them. Now, right now I'm not going to feature a particular artist, but I'm going to give you an idea of music history from the time that I became musically aware, which was probably around 6-7 years old. I was about 9 years old when I first started singing professionally in public, but when I was 8 I started playing guitar. And during that time, there were a lot of shifts in the music sand, so to speak. Now, I was born in 1968, which of course tells you my age, if you can do the math. Acts like Elvis, the Beatles, had already come and gone, at least in terms of the heights of their success. I think I was about right at 8 years old when Elvis died. I remember that day just like a lot of people remember the assassination of Kennedy. Days in history that we remember where we were at those times. Well, I remember coming home from school, and at that point we lived next to my grandparents, and when I came home from school and my parents weren't home, I would go to my grandparents' house. And my grandfather was watching TV when I got there, and the special report came that Elvis Presley had died. Elvis was more of a image to me. I mean, his music was a little before my time in terms of it really being an influence. Elvis's image, which influenced TV shows like Fonzie on Happy Days, they were the ultimate example of what being cool was, or the image of a rock star as we come to know it today. Yes, there were others before them in different genres of music, like Frank Sinatra. Around this time, the image of any artist was becoming as important as the music, especially in the times before the internet. Not every artist became so well known, both in what they looked like and their music, because media was limited back in those days. Anything that was on TV, you only had maybe a couple of chances to see. Any program that you enjoyed, they would run their seasonal shows and then rerun them again during the summertime. So really, to see any show, you only had about 2 shots of seeing them, whereas now with the internet, it's pretty much at your fingertips. Back then, this was not so. You had radio, of course, so you didn't see the artist. And there were some TV shows at this time that were oriented only towards music, like Midnight Special, and some variety shows like The Osmonds. A lot of the time, you didn't know what a band looked like unless they had their picture on the album cover, or maybe some of the rock magazines that had come into the scene at this time, like Rolling Stone, Cream, Hit Parader, Circus. All of these magazines were among the first that were really dedicated to music and the artists and their pictures and interviews. When we come to the mid to late 70s, some of this began to change. And one of the things that propelled this were music videos. And one of the first, I think, that really made an impact was probably Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, which was one of the first videos I think I ever saw or realized, that this was a new genre being developed. And we were also starting to see the beginning of cable TV. Now, of course, this changed everything when it comes to media, just like the internet has done. Around 1980 came MTV, which was a game changer for everyone in the music business, because now you had a channel totally dedicated to music, and you also got to see the artists that you were hearing. You were beginning to have bands that were more theater oriented. All these elements seemed to kind of merge together and eventually become a more image oriented industry. Now, of course, there were exceptions to these rules early on. Elvis, the Beatles, you might say Jim Morrison from the Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, they did transcend the limitations of media at the time to become more recognizable faces in music. But a lot of these people did not even survive into what we would call now the video age. Elvis did movies, of course, which was a very big part of his career, and television also was the focus of his resurgence at least a couple of times up to his death. 2 television specials that were intended to revive his career worked very well. So literally at this point, if you had shown me a picture of, say, REO Speedwagon, Kansas, Styx, although I was familiar with their songs, I couldn't have told you what they looked like at that point. It really wasn't until the video age came and MTV that really made the difference in bands becoming instantly recognizable along with their songs. On the next episode, I will feature my first artist, and it's also surprisingly not one of the ones that you would expect probably from what I have just talked about. Because in my career, at my age, country music was actually easier to break into, and I will also include country artists in this series. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Please remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of Para Music Hall of Fame.